jump right into the last video of the day for reaction. Um, you remember talking about Snow White? You guys remember that? I talked about it a long time ago. I haven't really I didn't continuously talk about it, but I have talked about it and uh, trying to find something. I'm trying to stalk because I wanted to find something, but Snow White recently came out, and you know for a fact that that was already kind of not. It wasn't. People weren't looking forward to it. It was doomed to fail from the start. Mostly because Rachel Zegler's interviews, where she just kept calling how the movie was weird, and she was saying that the prince was like a stalker, and in this iteration of the movie, there's no going to be like the true love's first kiss. Not gonna be about the finding love at all. As a matter of fact, they were saying that how the prince, or she was saying how the prince's scenes, the guy who plays the prince, all of his scenes might be cut from the movie. Who knows? And she was trying to make a joke about it and shit like that. But she did such a bad publicity for the movie that the movie just burned, crashed. There was so much more that made this movie trash or dead on arrival. There was so much more that it's really nobody's surprised that the movie is donezo. So before we get to the reaction, there's two things before we get to the reaction. One, fit check. So yep, got Invader Zim with Gurr up here in the corner. They chilling. They flying through space, and of course, I got this little bear on my jacket, just chilling. But yeah, so that's that. Let me show you the other thing. The king has been dethroned. Dragon Ball Evolution had a 2.5 out of 10 star rating. Snow White has a 2.3 out of 10 star rating. Now, I know the movie just came out, right? But the ratings are already done, so it's not like they're going to change, right? The King, which was a one of the first and worst, not one of the first, I guess, but the worst live action movie of an anime adaptation, has been dethroned. Low key, I'm glad about that. I never watched the movie anyway. I saw clips, and I was like, I'm not looking at that shit. This was trash. But I'm just glad that something that came from anime, even though it destroyed, it tried to destroy the image of Dragon Ball, even it's something that came from anime is doing better than is dethroned as being the worst. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just happy about that. But yeah, let's get to this video that we were going to that we're gonna check out, and the video is titled "Snow White: The Most Absurd Disaster Ever Made." And I'm just kind of like, yo, this when you see things, it's like, yo, why are y'all fucking with that up? Why are y'all trying to change that for whatever reasons? Instead of changing something that it's a beloved, from childhood times and shit, just make something new. Why do you have to remake shit? But anyway, when I see DEI inclusion things or woke things fail, it makes me feel tingly inside,
Well, it's finally here.
By the way, as always, links to the video, links to the channel will both be in the description below. So be sure to check out Moon. Also, subscribe to my channel because your boy's trying to hit 1 million subs, or not 1 million, 1,000 subs. Maybe one day, 1,000 subs by the end of the year. So help your boy out. Let's get to it.
After months of theories about it being cancelled, Disney's Snow White has officially hit the cinemas. The last 2 weeks before a movie's release, especially as one as controversial as Snow White, always seems the quietest. It's like the calm before the storm as everyone holds their breath in anticipation. And it turned out to be just as bad as everybody was expecting.
Damn.
It's a horrendous blend of questionable direction, poor costume design, and just awkward writing. And this all became evident as soon as the first
So much for that 2.3. They were just trying to do him a favor. How much they get paid for that?
song started playing. Because you see, one of the most significant issues with this movie is that they're trying to tell two different stories at once. The first is an ode to the original animation, something that many people felt very strongly about with this movie. Considering the original Snow White was one of the most important films in history, it's what made Disney where it is today. And and defeats evil through her kindness. It's infused with deeper messaging, appealing to everyone for generations. And now this modern version is just Disney's modern retelling of a headstrong girl destined to lead her kingdom. And this is probably the tuned down version, considering all the backlash the movie has received over the last 2 years. But unfortunately, neither story is told very well in this movie. Now it's easy
all the the BS that Rachel Zegler said in the interviews or whatever about the original Snow White and about the Snow White movie in general. Like all the BS they said, like that really pissed people off, yo. That's what this is what y'all get, man. They could have just said, all right, after Rachel, Rachel made that first interview, and after people were like, hold on, what? They could have just said, all right, no, we gotta replace her. Like I know they have contracts and stuff, but like for the ones who put that contract out, like there had to be some way for them to terminate the contract, right? And so they could just replace her, like, nah, we need to get that out of here, because the immediate response, the people didn't like it. So that's gonna let me know that if we continue forward, it's highly unlikely that this is going to do good, because first impressions are important, right? So get her out of here, rewrite the script if you need to, and make it as best as you can in comparison to like the actual original cartoon animation. Make sure it's about True Love's first kiss and falling in love and all that. But nah, they were like, nah, this is fine. We need to force this. We need to force this woke shit. Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, we'll make it. We will make them like it.
To pick out which parts of the movie are initial footage and which are just reshoots, and this is mostly because of how Snow White's personality seems to change. For the first third of the film, Rachel Zegler surprisingly seems sweet and naive, reminiscent of the original cartoon, and everything Rachel Zegler seemed to be against in interviews for the movie. And yet here she is, cleaning the castle, singing to herself, and worrying about what's happening in a kingdom she doesn't know much about. And she maintains this personality up until she leaves the dwarfs' cottage. However, it's when she's wandering the forest and encounters her love interest for the second time that her personality begins to take a jarring change.
Dude, the love interest wasn't even in the freaking. Oh, let me bring things back up real quick. The love interest wasn't even in the freaking the poster. Like, what? The love interest isn't even in the poster for the movie. That's how you know. Like, yeah, he gonna be in the movie. Just he got like 2 scenes, a couple scenes. Ain't really not impactful. You know what I'm saying? Bro, that's so wrong. It's so cold-blooded. Why you gotta be so cold-blooded?
Still sheltered, she's much more stubborn and outspoken, just like people were predicting Snow White would be based on the actor's original interviews. She also doesn't seem to appreciate how her love interest is framing her. The two sides of her personality seem to be at war until the final confrontation with the evil queen. Then she's back to being a sweet, naive girl who happily dances her way through the kingdom. But unfortunately, Snow White's contradictory personality is just the tip of the iceberg with everything wrong in the movie. As overall, it just felt like to me.
It's bad. Like it's really bad when her personality shows through. Like her like when all the things that people have said against her, and how all the things that she said in interviews and she's been caught saying in recordings, like how she said, I should be getting paid for every moment I'm in this dress, even if we're not shooting, or you know what I'm saying? For her personality to show through, that you're supposed to be an actor, you're not supposed to let that shit affect you while you're recording, while you're making a movie. But 2, that shows that it really got to her. Like she's probably donezo when it comes to like the movie business.
Most viewers, they were trying to do too much in too short of a time frame. As a result, some parts of the movie are very obviously missing. For example, at one point, Snow White mentions the name of a character we're never actually introduced to. They then try to hide this by panning over to the character in question, but it still feels out of place, especially since the scene in question is used to force romance. But you can't even really call the dynamic between Snow White and her love interest Jonathan as a romance. You see, Jonathan goes from actively disliking her and lecturing her about her privilege to then suddenly taking taking an arrow for her. But bearing in mind that up until this point, the two have known each other for just 2 days at most. Now, of course, this is often the case with Disney romance stories.
Simp. I don't like her. I don't like her and how privileged or whatever she acts. Blah, 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 blah. 2 days later. Oh, I used to be an adventurer once, but then I took an arrow to the knee. Simp.
But these stories are usually always supported by the chemistry between the characters, but Snow White and Jonathan just seem to have almost none. It's just completely forced in for the script. Despite this though, the movie does insist that these two are madly in love with each other. They're so in love with each other in fact that it's enough to break the curse the evil queen puts on Snow White.
Really?
But the whole romance is just way too rushed to ever feel meaningful, and it just ends up feeling flat. There's no interest.
That's because they probably didn't want romance into it. Like she said, I'm pretty sure she said that this movie's not going to be about true love's first kiss. It's not like, which tells me it's not going to be about romance. It's not going to be about true love. It's not going to have any of that. It's going to be about this girl boss bullshit. So of course it's rushed. And of course they didn't actually make it sentimental. They didn't actually make the romance of it like meaningful. There was no connection for the audience to, there was probably no way for the audience to build a connection to them being a couple. Because you know how like audience, people do that? That like if two people, same famous people get together, like the people will put their names together just to make like a name to call that couple. You know what I'm saying? So there was no way for the audience to build that up just so they could do that kind of thing.
Intrigue, no new angle between the characters, no depth. They just end up together suddenly because it was convenient for the story. And speaking of convenience, that's the only thing that can be used to describe the climax of this movie, as Snow White faces no real challenges at the end like she's supposed to, despite saying that defeating the evil queen won't be easy. Her victory just sort of lazily curls itself around her hand. The townsfolk who stated to have forgotten what she looks like suddenly recognize Snow White and rally behind her without her having to say anything. She literally just walks into town and takes her hood off.
No encouraging song to like rally the troops, rally the citizens of Snow Whiteville or whatever to gather behind her and follow her to wherever she's going. None of that. Come on.
That's it, there's no rousing speech, no sneaking around to get up close to the queen. She just suddenly appears in a bright red hood and the people are like, yes, this is the princess. And together they suddenly walk to the castle and the queen willingly comes outside to confront her face to face. But
Sounds
she doesn't
dumb.
even look surprised that Snow White is even alive. She just conjures up a dagger and tells her to kill her. But Snow White doesn't move. It seems like she doesn't know what to do now that she's in front of the queen. And you would have thought that she'd have a few more steps to overthrow the evil queen than gather a group of people and demand the castle back. This is as far as Snow White's plan goes. Fortunately, the queen does move the plot along by commanding her guards to kill Snow White, and it's all set up that these soldiers have been hunting the princess to kill her most of the movie, and yet we don't ever really see them outside of the scene and the queen's musical number. The audience is given no reason to ever care about them. It seems the only thing the movie really cares about is trying to prove Snow White's kindness is why she should lead, and the way she shows her kindness to these soldiers is by remembering their names. For some reason,
I should be the leader because I'm kind.
It's completely enough for the soldiers to turn their back on the evil queen and suddenly rally behind Snow White. And yet nobody even knows who she is. She hasn't done anything to show them she will be less of a tyrannical leader than the evil queen, and all she does to win is just remember their names. This could have been more significant if we'd seen the queen not bothering to call people by their names, but even that would be stretching things. So you'd think at this point the evil queen would start doing a bit more magic. After all, the movie seems to establish that she is a powerful sorceress at the beginning. Surely there must be more to her magic than her withering roses and poisoning apples. Just anything, even some more aura. Gal Gadot doesn't even seem to care about being this evil witch. The only thing that actually seems evil is that she tries to stab Snow White. But unfortunately for her, the dagger is shot out of her hand and somehow renders her powerless.
All that magic and you didn't even try to like take her out like in a magic type of way. You know what I'm saying? No fireballs, nothing like that. No curses, nothing. You try to go with a knife. You're supposed to be a mage. You're classified as a mage, and you're not Sung Jin Woo, so you can't be classified as a mage and be a badass assassin at the same time. If you've seen solo leveling, you know what I'm talking about. But you're classified as a mage. Why are you up front? Why are you in range of physical attacks by the other person?
The queen is then allowed to run back into the castle and back to her mirror. because suddenly her priority when being overthrown is to check to see if she's the most powerful woman in the land. Because apparently when she's being overthrown, the most important thing she can do is check to see if she's the most beautiful woman in the land. The mirror then says no, the queen breaks it just as Snow White enters the
Jealous
room.
bitch.
And this, for some unexplainable reason, is what kills the queen. She shatters and is drawn into an unexplained dimension behind the magic mirror, which then reforms once the deed is done. The whole climax just leaves you scratching your head. You have no idea really what's even going on.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen in the cartoon, the movie animation. But I like the concept. You know, you broke the magic mirror and the magic mirror like ensnares you and was like, maybe you replaced the talking head that was in the magic mirror. I kind of like the concept, the idea behind it, but...
And the main question is why any of this was greenlit in the first place. But this is far from the worst thing about the movie. That honor goes to the Huntsman. In the original cartoon, the Huntsman was one of the most terrifying characters in the movie.
Now
the
what?
moment when his shadow falls over Snow White like an omen of death was bone-chilling, enough to give any child nightmares. He didn't have a large part in the story, but was a very memorable character, and one that added a lot of depth to the movie. But the 2025
They made him
rendition of the
black.
character just doesn't hold a flame to the original.
Of course
He's
they
the
did.
least intimidating thing in the entire movie, and it doesn't help that he doesn't seem to know how to hold a dagger properly. He just pulls it out and stiffly points it at her, moving closer with every confused why she throws at him. Zegler's Snow White doesn't even seem remotely terrified of him. She could have easily stepped away from the Huntsman and his poorly held knife, but instead she just randomly stands in one place and lets him advance on her. It's like he's stuck in place, nothing moving except his mouth as he instructs her to run into the forest. It's hard to see what the actors were really going for, but the execution was just terrible. At one point,
You didn't even try to... Run into the forest, run away from me. I'm here to kill you, but run.
near the end of the movie, he's standing in the middle of a room, but the actor just seems so incredibly stiff that your eyes immediately go to him. He looks like a poorly animated NPC and it just looks awful. Not even Gal Gadot, who's been
It looks like he's about to do like a walking animation where he just... It doesn't go anywhere, just sits there like... And then suddenly he walks into an item or walks into like a pole or something and just... Kind of like on Rick and Morty, where they were just like, yes, over and over again, like the glitch.
frequently called wooden was that bad. But with all of that said, Snow White wasn't just a complete train wreck. There were a few good things about the movie. Most notably, or even surprisingly, was Rachel Zegler's singing. The song she sang definitely seemed to line up with Disney princesses in general, giving some merit to the claim that she was chosen for the role because she could actually sing.
Okay,
and
that's
while the
good.
same can't really be said for Gal Gadot, she still has some good moments. Her prosthetics for the old hag were very well done, and seemingly worth the 4 hours in makeup, as it gave
Damn.
some level of realism to the film that would have been completely lost if Disney just tried to CGI the old hag look. But unfortunately, that's kind of it about the movie. It's just a boring, bland mess. Its plot was convoluted at the best of times, and it's just riddled with holes at worst. It's a completely forgettable movie that everybody will move on with and never even think about in the future. But at least Disney finally released this, after 2 years of just awful hype. Even just the last 2 weeks before the film's release was just completely dead. Nobody even cared to speak about it anymore. It was like the calm before the storm as everyone held their breath in anticipation of a disaster. But this wasn't the case with Snow White. If anything, the controversy only seemed to get worse. And of course, their lead actress was right in the thick of it. As the release date of Snow White approached,
Yeah, like isn't it her fault? Like, wasn't she like the first one to like start all the controversy with the interview? At least that's what I saw. They just had to get someone to talk complete shit about her.
Disney seemed to be doing everything possible to keep its lead actresses apart. Gal Gadot conducted fluffy interviews with various media outlets. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler was traveling around singing in non-English speaking countries. The reason for this separation came after the two voiced differing political opinions. People could only speculate about what was really happening behind closed doors. However, with no way to confirm those speculations, people turned their attention to Zegler and her solo press tour. You see, there wasn't much coverage surrounding her appearances, as she was very rarely interviewed, which might not be a surprise considering the past interviews she did and how awful this was for the film's reception, but it was still weird. With hundreds of millions going into this movie, why was the lead actress not being interviewed about it? Well, not too long after her tour ended, an insider at Disney confirmed the real reason why. Apparently the studio minimized the
bad for
number
it.
of press questions Zegler received because she was out of control, which is
Like, duh. Like, again, I'm surprised they didn't just take her out of the movie. Like, I know there's contracts and everything like that, but I'm pretty sure there was a way for them to just take her out of the contract. But
is no surprise after her last few scandals.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
However, despite the limited press coverage, Zegler had still found a way to upset people. As she realized that people weren't taking kindly to her bashing the original animation, she changed her tune on many things. Unfortunately for her, nothing she says is going to save the film now, not even commending people for their passion of the original movie. During an interview with Vogue Mexico, she commented that it was an honor to be a part of something that people felt so passionate about. But nobody listened to this after her previous interviews, as it just seemed like a desperate scramble to appease those who threatened to boycott the movie, much like Disney's attempts to keep the actresses away from each other. It did nothing to stave off the controversy that was mounting, as there was only so long that Disney could avoid having Gaydos and Zegler in the same room, and the studio knew that. However, rather than bring them together for an interview, the studio broadcast just how bad things were at the Oscars. I suppose if you're going to tank a film, you might as well do it in style. During the evening, Gaydos and
Go big or go home.
Zegler presented an award, and people could immediately tell that something was off. Typically, when celebrities present together, they exchange banter to draw laughter out of the audience. There's some natural chemistry. But with them, there was absolutely no chemistry. Not even Disney could force it. From the moment they walked on stage, they seemed to ignore each other. With polite smiles on their faces,
Yeah, they don't even want to look at each other when one of the other ones are talking. Like, look at that shit.
But with them, there was absolutely no chemistry.
If she starts talking,
Not
she doesn't want to look at
Disney
her.
could force it.
So it's
From the moment they walked on stage, they seemed to ignore each other. With polite smiles on their faces, they read from the teleprompter and stared right at the camera. They wouldn't even look at each other. It was like they were purposefully avoiding each other despite being on the same stage, convincing everyone that these two people couldn't stand each other. They weren't even playfully pretending to hate each other.
I mean, Gal Gadot is probably mad at Zegler, like, big time. I mean, I know Rachel said something about the thing, something about like the war that's been going on, and I'm pretty sure Gal Gadot took that personal, and like she's like on the other side of the political thing for that. Don't get mad at me before I don't really focus on politics and things that I can't control within my own world. So I don't really know much about it. Sorry, not sorry, but that's just, if I can't control it or do anything about it, then why am I'm not gonna worry about it or pay much attention to it, because that's just gonna cause me more worry and stress in my own life, and I don't really need that, to be honest. But not only did that happen between them, but Rachel Zegler probably made her look completely bad, or obviously she made the movie look bad. And so Gal Gadot probably didn't want that, because if Rachel makes the entire movie look bad with everything that she's been saying, it makes people not want to watch the movie, then all the work that she puts into that Gal Gadot puts in for trying to make the movie good and trying to make her, play her role perfect so that the movie can be great, kind of goes to waste, because nobody's going to want to watch it anyway, because after what Rachel said.
Each other either, which arguably would have saved them any rumors about disliking each other. They just pretend the other one doesn't exist until they can get off the stage and sigh a breath of relief. The whole thing was made so much better by the fact that they were presenting the award for Best Visual Effects, and out of all possible categories, that was the one chosen for the leads of the CGI hodgepodge that is Snow White. Whoever made that decision is either clueless or paid off by Disney. But media outlets claim that the hatred between the two is why Disney has cancelled and scaled back the Snow White premieres, along with all the hate online. Which is really crazy considering that Disney premieres have always been massive events. The guest lists are always star-studded, and everyone who can wants a chance to walk the red carpet. Of course, every media outlet in
they had Will Simp there.
Existence is there taking photos and interviewing everyone they can. And there's always a premiere in Europe or the UK for those who aren't in America. However, shortly after this Oscar fiasco, the studio took a different approach with Snow White. There was a red carpet, but Disney's guests were asked fewer questions than usual. This was because Disney limited coverage to photographers and a house crew, because what better way to prevent your lead from killing your movie than keeping her from saying anything? The premiere in Los Angeles wasn't the only one affected, but while that one was only downscaled, the one meant to be held in London was just cancelled altogether. The last time a studio scaled down their own premieres so drastically was for The Flash, and that was because of Ezra Miller's criminal behaviour. If that's not a sign that Disney has zero faith in the film's success, then I don't know what is. But impressively, Snow White's premiere was not only the smallest Disney has hosted in years, it's also had the worst numbers for advance tickets. When studios like Disney release a film, they start selling tickets at least a month in advance. Because of the hype that follows these films, the opening weekend showings are sold out within hours. With these huge $100 million+ budgets, you kinda need this, otherwise the film will just bomb. but this time the studio didn't even open advance ticket sales until 2 weeks before the movie was set to release. This was almost unheard of, especially for a film the studio once thought was a guaranteed hit. It's literally Disney's most famous film in the past, and the one that made Disney as successful as it is today. But even more unheard of is just how slowly
how the tides have turned. Like one of the films that made Disney so successful back in the day is now one of the remake, quote unquote remake, is now one of the films that could end up being the downfall of Disney. That's harsh, man. Like to go from being the reason of why this was such a success to going to be like this was such a downfall, and it could possibly, also end up helping to ruin Disney. Now, obviously, the major difference between those two versions are the employees. And some employees are with the new one are probably just like, we got DEI the hell out of this shit. We got wokeify the shit out of this shit. Make sure there's no love story, blah 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 blah, all that type. Like snub the love story out, make it like 5 minutes and rush that shit. Don't worry about it. But make this a boss bitch movie. Like take all the meaning out of the old one. Yeah, just shove this new meaning in. People will love that. No.
they were selling the tickets. The theatres were taking ages to fill up. Smaller theatres had barely filled up after a few days. In the excessively large ones, well, the numbers were just downright embarrassing. A month ago,
What is that? I'm not gonna count how many seats there are, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 seats filled, and out of this entire giant like what? Don't tell me that was the end result. Like, tell me that's like in the middle of, or like there's still like an hour left or so of the movie before the movie is, starts playing, so people still have time to buy tickets. Tell me it's something like that.
The excessively large ones, well, the numbers were just downright embarrassing. A month ago, Snow White was expected to make $65 to $68 million, but as ticket sales have failed to gain traction, those numbers dropped to an estimated $48 to $58 million. This is on par with what the Marvels made on its opening weekend. Analysis have tried to blame the depressing numbers on the age of the original film. Apparently, younger audiences might not recognize Snow White because the original movie was released all the way back in 1937.
Parents, this is a good time to do your job and parent and take your kid back home and like find the original movie and watch that at home.
But this just feels like a really flimsy excuse, especially when you actually see the movie. The company knew they had to do something drastic to turn this movie around and finally recover the financial loss the movie was destined to have.
How they do that?
So Disney would try to do everything they could to shift the narrative, which is why the morning after the original premiere, it seemed like no media outlet had anything bad to say about Snow White. After 2 years of controversy and people bashing the film relentlessly, Disney had seemingly won the battle. Variety even called it a visual feast.
When in doubt, buy the press out.
Critic called it the best live-action adaptation in years, with people even going so far as to say that this would be fans' favourite live-action remake. All of this onslaught of positivity just made no sense. It came out of nowhere. It was almost like being in a parallel universe where Disney remembered how to write these stories. But unfortunately for Disney, they couldn't control the narrative for that long, as people soon realised the positivity was only limited to the few outlets that Disney had invited to the premiere. And on March 16th, 2025, writers at That Park Place had a very interesting discovery brought to their attention. As it seemed, the Hollywood Reporter had quietly attempted to edit one of their articles. The article in question referenced Snow White as CGI dwarfs and how they came to be. This was such a weird thing to do, it managed to take away the spotlight from Rachel Zegler. As according to the Hollywood Reporter, Mark Webb, the director of the movie, had always planned to use CGI dwarfs. Not only was this a strange attempt to make Snow White critics look unreasonable, but this was just a blatant lie. It was like they were hoping people were too stupid to notice the change. But unfortunately for the Hollywood Reporter, someone had actually downloaded the original article as a PDF and immediately brought the change to That Park Place's attention. And it showed how Disney and all these other media companies would go this slow just to try and change the narrative.
The internet is forever. So shout out to those internet detectives that be like, nah, hold up, let me go find the original. We getting into this.
which is not something you do when you're confident in the movie. But as soon as the movie was released and the veil was lifted, all bets were off, and Snow White never stood a chance. The Independent called it lazy and visually repellent, the HuffPost called it a strange hot mess, and the Times declared that Disney had trashed its reputation, and that the movie was a new low both for the studio and for cultural desecration. The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw was particularly harsh, as he called it an exhaustingly awful project, with a tiring pseudo-progressive approach that felt hollow, with everybody everywhere basically coming to the exact same conclusion: don't watch this movie. CBS News even went so far as to say Snow White is firmly the pantheon of films that chip away at our culture simply by existing. This whole film has just been nothing but one problem after another for Disney, and a funnel simply by existing.
Snow White is firmly in the pantheon of films that chip away at our culture simply by existing. People don't even have to watch it. It exists, and therefore it chips away at our culture, and like slowly trying to destroy us. Trying. Damn.
This whole film has just been nothing but one problem.
Hold on, what else to say? What else to say? Stupidly forcing a story design for animation into live action, where it can't help but showcase the shortcoming of one while invalidating the other. Ooh.
Chip away at our culture simply by existing. This whole film has just been nothing but one problem after another for Disney, and a final wake-up call that none of Disney's BS will be tolerated by audiences anymore.
Yo, shout out to Moon's channel. He's always got some good videos. Link to his channel, link to today's video, both be in the description below, so be sure to check him out. Yo, I ain't surprised. At the flop that Snow White is. It's like when you try to force things on people that people don't want in their content, you get what you reap what you sow. Like, people were saying that this movie's gonna be bad. The movie ended up being bad. People complained about Assassin's Creed Shadows. The Ubisoft didn't listen. The game's doing trash. Game lost money, lost investors, lost stocks, all that. When are corporate executives, when are they gonna actually start listening to the public? It's like they have an agenda to try to force things upon us until the us generation, our generation, they're gonna continue to force things upon us until our generation kind of dies out, and the younger generation slowly, the generations after us grow in age, and then they become more accepting of all the agenda push that they're trying to force. So it's like they're trying to play the long game, and they're willing to sacrifice companies for it. But hey, whatever. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. If you wasted your money going to see Snow White, or if you wasted your money playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, you have my sympathy. But not really, because like everybody knew it was gonna be terrible, or they were going to be terrible. But anyway, yeah, I'm out for now. So as always, don't forget to do those 3 things I like to ask you to do, and like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell for more videos. Yeah, you know what it is after that. In case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Peace. Much love to you.